There's a great report out in the Washington Post on the issue of unlimited money buying our politicians. They talk about America in a post-McCutcheon world. That, of course, is the recent Supreme Court case that put legalized corruption on steroids. But in reality, the article is about a post-Buckley versus Vallejo, Citizens United, and McCutcheon world, because those are the cases from the late 1970s until today that basically turned the entire country and our political system into a kleptocracy and not a democracy. They say, quote, Andrew Sabin, who owns a New York-based precious metals refining business, was delighted when the Supreme Court did away with donation limits in April. Since then, he has been doling out contributions to congressional candidates across the country in Colorado, Texas, Iowa, and even Alaska. Top Republicans have taken notice. Senator Ted Cruz from Texas and Florida Governor Rick Scott have paid him personal visits this year. They say, quote, you have to realize when you start contributing to all these guys, they give you access to meet them and talk about your issues. So that's a quote from the guy himself, Andrew Sabin. He's like, wow, when I give these guys a lot of money, they're willing to have personal meetings with me, they're willing to hear me out, and they can't wait to act on legislation or propose legislation in order to help me out. Jeez, it's so strange, man. I give somebody a lot of money and they like me. Wild. The Washington Post continues, quote, Sabin has given away more than $177,000. He says, they know I'm a big supporter. Another example they give in the article is Scott Walker. He's the quintessential sellout politician. Quote, Walker was instructed by his fundraising consultant, Kate Donor, that's an ironic last name, to grab billionaire Paul Singer at a meeting at Sea Island in Georgia. Paul Singer donated $250,000 to him after that meeting. Other big money donors Walker met with include Michael Sullivan of SAC Capital Advisors, who donated $1 million after meeting with Walker. Walker met with Donald Trump on March 30th, 2012, and Trump donated $15,000 on April 3rd, 2012. Home Depot founder Ken Langone had a phone conversation with Scott Walker on March 30th, 2012, and the same day he wrote a $15,000 check to Wisconsin Club for Growth. But that's not even the worst of it. Quote, the most blatant example of pay for access was Walker's deal with a Wisconsin mining company. The company donated $700,000 to Walker and sought access to a public forest for mining purposes. Having heard the company's position and appeal, Walker supported legislation to expedite the permit approval for the company. Walker and Wisconsin Club for Growth also supported legislation, making that an exclusive deal by closing access to the forest. God damn. You want to talk about government to the highest bidder? At this point, they're just rubbing it in our face. And then the Washington Post sums it all up with the following, quote, another billionaire who's given more than $191,000 directly to candidates and party committees this election cycle said that since the limit on total donations was lifted, he fields incessant political solicitations. My phone rings, and rings. It's made me poorer. I'll tell you that, but it's made it possible for me to do a better job as a citizen. It used to be kind of nice to say, I'm maxed out. Of course, he's referring to when they used to actually have caps and limits on the amount of money you can contribute. And he says, but I really believe that people running for office need to have my support. Is this the kind of country we want? Is this what the founders had in mind when they crafted the Constitution? Seriously, stop and think about this. I don't care what your political ideology is. You can be a conservative, you can be a libertarian, you can be a progressive, you could be a fucking communist or a fascist. What we're dealing with here is none of the above. We're not dealing with any legitimate political disagreements or a debate of ideas and philosophies and differing legislation. We are simply talking about a corrupt system where the politicians sell out to the highest bidder and do their bidding. And like I already said, they're not even bothering to hide it anymore. They're just like, yeah, I'll take money from you and I'll take money for you. And what legislation do you want again? And what kind of tax break did you want me to get for you again? And what kind of corporate welfare check and subsidy did you want me to do again? Look, this is why Congress has a 9% approval rating. This is why nobody likes politicians in the United States of America, because they're not representing us. And I could give you example after example after example where the American people say, we want X done on a particular issue. And the politicians say, that's nice, take a hike, we'll do the opposite. Why? Because they have special interests and donors pulling them in the opposite direction. The perfect example is the minimum wage. 80% of the American people want to see a raise in the minimum wage. That's a majority of Democrats, a majority of independents, and a majority of Republicans say, raise the minimum wage. But we haven't gotten it yet. Why? Because the corporate interests are the ones saying, not so fast, Democrats and Republicans. Remember when I gave you $100,000 last election cycle? Well, guess what you can do for me for that money? Not raise the minimum wage. How about just moderate gun reforms to end the gun anarchy in America? So just a universal background check. Again, a position which Democrats, Independents, Republicans, and a majority of NRA members supports. We didn't get it. 93% of the country wants it. We didn't get it. We didn't even get a watered-down background check bill. Why is that? Because the gun manufacturers paid the leadership of the NRA. The leadership of the NRA gave donations to the politicians, and then the politicians did the bidding of the NRA leadership and the gun manufacturers. And, of course, what is the only group in the United States of America that wants no gun regulation whatsoever? The gun manufacturers, because it would cut into their profits, even if you do the most mild gun reform. It's issue after issue. I can go on and on. There are so many issues where we're overwhelmingly in agreement and we don't get the policy we want. Foreign policy. The overwhelming majority of the American people want to be non-interventionist. They don't want to use the American troops unless we absolutely have to as a last resort because there's imminent threat of attack against us. But nonchalantly, we have 900 military bases around the world. We have wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We muse out loud about whether or not we'll go into Ukraine to fight Russia. We muse out loud about going into Syria. I mean, it's just anytime there's even a slight opportunity for war, John McCain, Lindsey Graham are out there, war, fight, yes, go, go, go. Neoconservatives never met a war they didn't like. To this day, they're brazen about, let's fight more. This is why 57% of discretionary spending goes to the military budget. And again, why is that? Because you have the defense contractors paying the politicians, and the politicians pass bills and pass laws and do legislation that ends up giving the defense contractors more money and ends up pushing us into more wars. The system is totally broken. We need to reform it. I don't want to beat a dead horse here and repeat the same things over and over, but look, I agree with the Young Turks and Cenk and the system that he set up to try to fight back against this. It's wolf-pac.com. It's a super PAC to end all super PACs, and the idea behind it is we get a constitutional amendment. We don't go through Congress because they're super fucking corrupt, so we get enough states to get a constitutional convention. Then we get a constitutional amendment which says, hey, money does not equal free speech. We're banning corporate personhood, and you have to publicly finance elections. And it's against the law to do any private donations to politicians. That's the answer. We just have to push for it until we get it.